The biggest problem with schools today is that they treat everyone exactly the same. We're not robots, but the system acts like we are. You sit in a row, listen to the teacher, memorize facts for a test, and then forget them a week later. That might have worked a long time ago when everyone went to work in factories, but the world has changed. Today, you need to be creative and solve new problems. Sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day doesn't teach you that. It just teaches you how to follow orders and stay quiet. I think people learn best when they follow their own interests and learn by doing, not by listening to a lecture. What do you think? Why do you feel the current system is actually working?
I understand your frustration, but I think you are missing the main value of the system. First, treating everyone the same is actually about fairness. The education system tries to make sure that everyone, no matter who they are, gets the same basic tools. Everyone needs to know how to read, write, and do math to function in society. If we just let people follow their interests, many would skip the hard or boring subjects that they actually need to survive. Second, you mentioned that school teaches you to follow orders like it is a bad thing, but discipline is necessary. In the real world and in traditional jobs, you have to show up on time, finish tasks you don't like, and work with people you might not get along with. School prepares you for that. It teaches you how to focus and stick to a schedule, which is a skill you need for the rest of your life. Creativity is important, but you cannot solve complex problems if you don't have a strong foundation of knowledge first. School provides that foundation so you can build on it later.
You say the system is about fairness, but I disagree. Giving everyone the exact same test isn't fair if everyone is different. Some people learn by listening, but others learn by moving, building, or drawing. When school forces everyone to sit still and listen, the kids who need to move are treated like they are bad or slow. That doesn't give them a fair start. It destroys their confidence before they even begin. Regarding discipline, I think there is a big difference between discipline and just following orders. School teaches obedience. Sit down, be quiet, ask permission to use the bathroom. That is not the same as having the self-control to work hard on a passion project. The real world actually rewards people who can think for themselves and start things on their own, not just people who wait to be told what to do. As for the basics, of course we need reading and math, but we don't need 12 years of sitting in a classroom to learn them. Most people learn the basics much faster when they need them for something real, like running a small business or building something, rather than filling out worksheets for a grade.
I think you are overlooking why standards exist. The real world runs on standards. If a person builds a bridge or performs surgery, I do not care about their learning style. I care that they passed the standard tests and know exactly what everyone else in their field knows. School teaches you to meet those standards, even if it is not your favorite way to learn. That is a skill called adaptability. On the topic of obedience, you make it sound like everyone can just be their own boss, but that is not realistic. Traditional jobs and big companies achieve huge things because people work together and follow a plan. If everyone just thought for themselves all day without listening to a leader, nothing would get finished. Learning to listen and follow instructions is crucial for teamwork. Also, you say people can learn basics quickly when they need them, but that is a big risk. How do you know what you need if you haven't been exposed to it? School gives you a map of the world, history, science, language, so you have choices later. Without that structure, many kids would never find out what they are actually good at.
You bring up safety standards for doctors and engineers, and I agree that we need experts to be well trained, but that is specialized training that happens after school. I am talking about the 12 years before that. We treat every child like they need to pass a standardized test, but real life requires different skills. Forcing everyone to learn the exact same way doesn't build adaptability, it just crushes the spirit of anyone who thinks differently. Regarding teamwork, I actually think school does a terrible job of teaching it. Think about it. Inside the classroom, helping your neighbor is often called cheating. You are graded on your own work, alone. School says keep your eyes on your own paper. Real life says ask your team for help so we can solve this faster. We are training kids to compete against each other rather than collaborate. And about the map of the world, the problem is that school makes the map incredibly boring. Instead of letting kids explore history or science because it's interesting, we make them memorize dates and facts just to pass a test. This actually makes many kids hate learning. If you let them follow a passion, they will naturally want to learn the history and science behind it because it matters to them. Don't you think the pressure to get good grades actually stops people from taking risks and learning for real?
I disagree with the idea that individual work crushes teamwork. Before you can be a good team member, you have to be competent yourself. If you do not know the material, you are not collaborating, you are just relying on others to do the work for you. Tests make sure that you actually have the skills to contribute. You cannot build a team out of people who all need help but have nothing to offer. Regarding grades and risk, the real world is actually much harsher than school. You said grades stop people from taking risks, but in a traditional job, taking a risk and failing can mean losing a client or losing your job. Grades teach you that there is a standard you have to meet. It is a feedback loop. It tells you exactly how well you are performing. Without that clear measurement, people might think they are doing well when they are actually failing. Finally, regarding the boring subjects, life is not always about following your passion. Most jobs involve doing repetitive or boring tasks that simply need to get done. If you only ever learn to do things that excite you, you will quit the moment things get difficult or dull. The education system builds the mental toughness to push through the boring parts to get the result.
I think there is a big difference between being competent and being good at taking tests. You said tests prove you can contribute to a team, but usually they just prove you have a good memory. I have met plenty of straight A students who don't know what to do when they face a real problem that doesn't have multiple choice answers. On the topic of grades, I actually think school is harsher than reality in the wrong way. In the real world, if you try something and fail, you can usually fix it, learn from it, and try again. It is part of the process. In school, if you make a mistake, you get a bad grade and it stays on your record forever. This teaches kids that mistakes are dangerous, so instead of trying new things, they play it safe. That is the opposite of how innovation happens. And about mental toughness, I agree we need to work hard, but there is a difference between working hard on a difficult project and just doing busy work. If you are building a house or writing a book, the hard parts have a purpose. You push through because you want the result. School often gives you boring work just to keep you busy. That doesn't teach toughness, it just teaches you how to switch off your brain and do the bare minimum to get by.
I think you are judging memory too harshly. You cannot think deeply about a subject if you have to look up every single fact on your phone. To be a true expert in a traditional job, you need that information stored in your brain so you can use it instantly. That is what tests measure. Do you actually own this knowledge, or are you just renting it? Also, I have to disagree about the real world being forgiving. You said in the real world you can fix mistakes. In many jobs, that is simply not true. If a lawyer misses a deadline, they lose the case. If an accountant puts a decimal in the wrong place, the company loses money and the accountant gets fired. School is actually the safe place to make mistakes. Getting a bad grade on a quiz is a warning shot. It hurts a little, so you learn not to make that mistake when your livelihood depends on it. As for busy work, I see it as practice. A basketball player shoots free throws over and over again. It looks boring and repetitive, but that is how they get good. Doing math problems or writing essays repeatedly builds your mental muscles. If you only did the fun parts, you would never develop the stamina to be a professional.
You talk about owning knowledge, but let's be honest about how school actually works. Most students cram. They stuff information into their heads the night before, pour it onto the test paper, and forget it 2 days later. That isn't expertise. That is temporary memorization just to survive the system. I believe real ownership of knowledge comes from using it. As you can see from how people actually learn, sitting in a lecture or reading a textbook has the lowest retention rates. Learning by doing, which is what I advocate for, is how you actually keep that information for life. Regarding practice, you mentioned the basketball player. That player shoots free throws because they want to win the game. They see the point of it. In school, we force kids to do the drills without ever letting them play the game. We make them do 50 math problems, but we rarely show them how that math builds a bridge or designs a video game. Without the why, the practice just feels like punishment. And about the feedback, a bad grade is actually a lazy way to give feedback. It says you failed, but it doesn't always help you improve. In a good job, a mentor sits you down and shows you exactly where you went wrong so you can fix it next time. School just marks it wrong and moves on to the next chapter, leaving the student behind. Do you really think a letter grade on a paper is better than actual human feedback?
I think you are being too idealistic. You want every student to have a personal mentor and a custom learning plan, but that is impossible. We have millions of kids to educate. The traditional system, classrooms, lectures, tests, is the only efficient way to make sure everyone learns the basics at the same time. You talk about learning by doing, but that often takes much longer. A teacher can explain a concept in 10 minutes. If you have to figure it out by doing it yourself, it might take you days. Lectures are actually a very fast way to transfer knowledge from an expert to a beginner. Also, you say grades are lazy, but they are objective. Human feedback can be biased. A teacher might like one student more than another, but a math test is either right or wrong. It doesn't play favorites. That objective standard is crucial for fairness. If we get rid of grades, how do we know who is actually working hard and who is just charming the teacher? And about the basketball analogy, you are right, they want to win, but the school system is the drill. The game is the job you get after you graduate. You have to earn the right to play the game by passing the drills first.
You talk about efficiency, but you are confusing teaching with learning. Just because a teacher talks fast and covers a lot of material doesn't mean the students caught any of it. If you lecture to a room of 30 kids and only 5 of them actually understand, that is incredibly inefficient. It is a waste of time for the other 25. You described the system perfectly when you called it drills. That is exactly the problem. We treat schools like factories. We push students through the same process at the same speed, regardless of what they are good at. You say this is necessary for fairness, but I think it is lazy. We have the technology now to let kids learn at their own pace, but we refuse to use it because we are stuck in the past. And regarding the game of life, the world has changed. You don't need to memorize information anymore because you have the sum of human knowledge in your pocket on a smartphone. The game today isn't about who knows the most facts, it's about who can think creatively and connect ideas. The current system measures how well you can act like a computer, but computers are already better at that than we are. We are training kids for a world that no longer exists.
You say that having a smartphone means we don't need to know facts, but I strongly disagree. You cannot think creatively about things you don't understand. If your head is empty, you have nothing to connect. Creativity is just connecting two pieces of information in a new way. If all that information is only on your phone, you cannot make those connections fast enough in the real world. Look at how learning actually works. You have to remember and understand at the bottom before you can create at the top. You want to skip the bottom steps, but the pyramid will fall down without that foundation. Also, you talk about technology allowing everyone to learn at their own pace. That sounds nice, but it removes the social part of school. School forces you to work at a pace that isn't just about you. It teaches you patience. If everyone just sits in a bubble with a tablet learning exactly what they want, we lose the shared experience that holds society together. Traditional jobs need people who can work on a schedule and communicate, not people who only work when they feel like it.
You showed that pyramid, and you are right that you need a foundation. But my big problem is that the current education system gets stuck at the bottom. We spend years and years on remembering and understanding just to pass tests, and we almost never get to the creating part. We're preparing kids for a future of repetition, but robots will do the repetitive work. Humans need to be at the top of that pyramid, creating and evaluating, which school rarely has time for because they have to rush to the next chapter. As for the social part, I think you're confusing being in the same room with being social. Sitting in a desk while a teacher says quiet down teaches you to be passive, not social. Real social skills come from working together on projects, debating, and making things together, things that the current system often calls distractions or talking in class. My point is simply this. This system was built for a different time. It tries to make everyone the same in a world that rewards people for being different. I have made my case. What is your final conclusion on why we should keep the system the way it is?
We clearly see the world differently, but I think my position comes down to one thing: stability. You view the education system as a cage that stops freedom. I view it as a safety net that stops people from falling. Here is why I believe we must keep the traditional system. 1. We need a shared foundation. If everyone just learns what they feel like learning, we lose the ability to understand each other. Society needs a common set of facts and skills to function. 2. Discipline matters more than passion. Passion comes and goes, but the ability to show up, follow a schedule, and finish a task you don't like is the most important skill for holding down a job. School teaches that better than anything else. 3. It is fair. It gives every child, rich or poor, the same standard chance to prove themselves. It is not perfect, but it is the best way we have to make sure no one is left behind. You want to tear the building down because the paint is peeling. I say we keep the building because the foundation is strong. We can fix the small problems, but we need the structure to survive. Thank you for the debate. It gave me a lot to think about.